Hello and welcome to this second part of the development of the translate tool. So we'll try to finish it in this session. So we are in the translate draw sketch handler of translate tool, and then we were at mouse move of the first translation. So let's have a look here first. We are going to change that to second translation point. So the general idea is that we will translate the geometries on first translation vector and then a second translation vector, and this way we'll have a rectangular array. So this won't be necessary. We are also going to get rid of that. I think we are going to remove all of that. It won't be necessary. Yeah, let's remove that. Then we'll go in there because we removed the edit curve, so we need to remove it here. Right, and then we'll go back in mouse move because I actually removed those values that we need locally, so I'll just add the declaration here, and that we won't need that anymore. So we were here at that point. I think, yeah, there's also a problem, is that I removed here something like the calculus of start angle, I think, and it might have been useful. Wait a moment. Yeah, right, let's go back. We'll go back to rotate tool here and grab what we deleted. It was in 6 seconds, and it's this part here and that we deleted, and I think we'll need that back, so I'll just paste that here, and let's look what we did. We calculated the start angle if we had the snap point. And this might be useful just for printing here. Just for printing, do we want to calculate that? And also length should be calculated as well if we snap to a point. Yeah, I think we need, because if we don't and we snap to a point, then length and start angle that are printed in blue next to the cursor will not be correct. So that's not a big thing, but why not grabbing it as well? So let's paste that first translation point here, start angle. So yeah, we'll keep calculating start angle. Yeah, here it's first translation point, and we have reference point here, right? So we'll keep that like this. It should be better. So then we calculate our first translation vector, which is basically the point minus the reference point. So here we set the text. We'll leave that, and that is not required. All right. So now what we need here is to generate the geometries, which are translated by this this vector. So if we have a look at seek third here, the third step of the rotate tool, you will see that this is the way the geometries are created here. This is not necessary, by the way. So, and you see that we have like this, which is this tool settings, which which is catching the number of copies if we input in a number of copy. And what is that before? Right, we will need that anyway. So let's go back here and think a little bit. If snap mod, and in the tool settings we have XY of reference points, so that's alright. And then we have first number of copies and first translation length. Right, so if we have set this setting, then the length should be overridden, and the number of copy will be useful too. So you see here we calculate the length, and then we need to actually override it somewhere before calculating the first translation point. Right, so we'll probably need something like that. Total angle. Else, yeah, we'll need something like that, I think. Let's think a little bit. Well, let's take that first, and we'll think while moving ahead. So here we'll create the geometries. Right after calculating the translation vector. But first what we want is to override the length. And so basically first translation point, the first translation point will not be on sketch position in the case where we applied a length here. So let's think about that. How are we going to do that? So first we'll use a if like that, which is basically checking if one setting has been set by the user. So we'll check the settings number 3, which is the first translation length, even if it's 4 here. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, so first translation length here. If we have set that, then the length should be equal to that parameter, right? And then the first translation point shouldn't be on sketch position, but it should be the point between reference point and on sketch position, which is at length distance. So yeah, so we'll have an else here. Welcome back. So yeah, sorry, I lost quite a bit of the video. My OBS just stopped recording, so I'll try to get back to where we were. So we were trying to actually see if the user has put an input in tool settings, and then if he had, then we need to update the translation point. So basically, if the user has put has entered the value for tool settings, then the length is that parameter, and then we calculate the first translation point depending on that length. And so if it didn't, then we see if there is a snap mode, and then if it didn't, then we have the first translation point, which is just on sketch position, right? Then we check for the number of copies, if it has been set in also in tool settings. By default it will be 0. Let me see. Yeah, by default it will be 0. And then we can calculate the translation vector, which is basically the point that we defined here minus reference point. Then we can draw the geometries. So I'll just check more often that it's recording now. Right, and so here we are just going to call that function, which is generate translate geometries. And this function has a boolean parameter, which is basically just telling it if it should draw or if it should create the geometries. Alright, if number of copies equals 0, I think this is not ideal. Delete original. Yeah, well, that's okay, we'll keep that. The idea is that if the number of copies is 0, then it will just translate the current geometries, and it will delete the originals geometries. So we'll keep that, and then we have here individual angle. We don't need that. This is just a convenience declaration to get the sketch object and then here we have generate geometries. So yeah, so here is what we want to modify. So the idea is that it will do it will create geometries n times depending on the number of copies. So you see it will do a lot of copies. I mean, that's how it will handle the number of copies, and then it will cycle through the selected geometries that needs to be translated. So, okay, and so for each of those geometries it will create a part, it will get the part geometry. No, it will create a part geometry which will be a copy of the current geometry. Yeah, so yeah, depending on the geometry it will not do the same thing. So for instance, let's take the first one. For a circle, if the geometry type equals geometry circle, so basically if the geometry is a circle, then we create a geometry circle, which is basically a cast of our geo variable here, and then what we want is just modify the center, because we just want to translate the geometry by the vector. So we don't even need that function here. We'll delete that, because for the translation it's simpler than for rotation. We just want like the center, and then we add the first translation vector multiplied by the number of copies, so by I, and that's about it. Yeah, oh, there's a problem. It's that our first translation vector is a 2D vector, and this is a 3D vector, so it's not liking it here. So this is a bit annoying. What should we do? We can either make first translation. Yeah, we'll use base vector 3. But then obviously it won't be happy here, so there's that as well. Well, for now let's just make something that works, and we'll make it cute later. So what we need is, we'll use .x. We'll set x and y, so that's not ideal. There's probably a way to do it better, but I don't know it. So let's just go ahead like this, and then here we can just write it like this. So it's nice to. Alright, let me think a little bit. Because we also want to think about when we will apply the second translation vector. So here a number of copies, we actually want two of those variables, because we have the first and the second number. We have, yeah, like this. Because yeah, we need two of them. So yeah, so actually what we want is to initialize the second number of copy to 1, because we actually want at least like one row of geometries, and then here what we want is to actually loop twice. So we want the first loop which will loop on the second number of copies, and so we need to change that. We'll use k++, and so k will start at 1 and it will stop at 1 as well. So if we have only one number of copies, it won't change anything, it will just loop once, and yeah, sounds about right. And so what we want is to actually, the circle, we want to change the center first by adding the first translation vector and also the second translation second translation vector here, which will be multiplied by k. Let me think. K. Which will be multiplied by k minus 1 actually. Because the first row shouldn't move. So yeah, we'll just change k here. It will go from 0 and it should be strictly inferior to second number of copies. So it will be 0 for the first row, and then for the second row it will be 1, and so on. So that should do the trick, right? Yeah, I think it should. So let's go here. Now we need for the arc of circle. So for arc of circle, well, it's basically the same. So let's remove all of that, because for rotation we need to change the angle, but not here. Here we just need the same as for the circle. And for, let me think, for ellipse it will be the same. For arc of ellipse too, I think it might be the same for all the conics, so we might as well just set. So for parabola we have set center, and for hyperbola we also have set center. Yeah, I think we just need to use one thing, which is conic. So geometry conic is like a masterclass for all the arcs and the ellipse and so on. So we can just put here geometry, no, not that, geometry conic, and have like, we can replace that by conic. It would make more sense. Conic, pushback conic. So basically that should do the trick for all the, so we can remove that case, and we can remove ellipse at all of those cases here, right? Yeah. And so now we have the line. So for the line we are going to use the same tool here. So it's about the same. We don't have that, we just have the start point, and to the start point we add that, and then we have the end point, and to the end point we add that as well, and we push back the line. All right, and here for the B-spline, let me just check. Now I'm checking every 5 minutes because I'm afraid it will be lost again. For the B-spline, what we do is that we cycle through the poles, and we modify the coordinate of the pole by the same function here. B-spline set poles, and yeah, oh, that was surprisingly easy. I think it should actually works like this. Yeah, so now we want to we'll check that later, but first I want to create the third step, so when we have to select the second translation point. So basically what I'm going to do is that I'm going to scrap all of that, and I'm just going to copy the 6-second because it will be very, very similar, and I'm just going to pass that here. And we're just going to modify it as we go. So the length is still we still need length and an angle, but let's call that something else. Why is it even called start angle here? Let's just call that angle. Yeah, makes more sense. So that doesn't change. Then tool settings here, it's not 3 anymore, it's 5. But other than that, it's the same here. Here we have let me grab that second translation point. Which is equal, yeah, that's good. Here I adjust that. Second translation point, second translation point. Here angle, second translation point. Here angle. Reference point. Alright. Angle. Number of copies. So here we have 4 now. And this is not number of copies, it's the second number of copies. And the second number of copies should not be 0, so we'll just add a minimum between 1 and that. Because if it's 0, then it won't be good. Right. What is, okay. Alright, second translation vector. Here we calculate second translation vector, which is, yeah, that's alright, and draw geometry is the same, right? And here, yeah, right. So I think that's it. That was rather easy. So let's close that, and we'll close that as well. Now we are just going to see if it works, just to draw the geometries. That's like the easier step. So this line, so we add a line just to show the first translation vector. So, but depending if we are on the first step, on seek second or seek third, then the line should not use the same, because here we are going to use first translation point. And a reference point here. Wait a minute, we are going to keep the second line after a thought, and we're going to say if where are we? Yeah, if the second vector dot length is not equal to 0, which is not a good, usually we shouldn't do that because it's a double. So yeah, we need to get like, we need to do something like that instead like this. But my keyboard doesn't has like these characters, so it's very annoying. Okay, so that means if the translation vector length is 0, and then we won't print that line, and if it's not, we'll print that line. So basically it will be reference point to reference point and second translation